Mark Curran, secretary, called, and she said he was not going to be here, you know, at the beginning, but he might, or he would drop in later. So I think we all know what his position is, and I'm going to ask Bill Kelly to, cover his position on the issue of driver's license for undocumented aliens. So let's give a warm welcome to Bill Kelly.
Well, thank you, Ray, and thank you all for having me and hearing what I had to say on this issue. The fact is, I have a lot to say about this issue. So, and I wrote some of it down. I'd like to, obviously share as much of this with you as possible, but I also want to hear what you have to say about the issue, and I recognize, obviously, more than a few people here. So I'd like to have this be more of a conversation among like-minded people. The goal always has to be, what is our strategy to overcome these, things like driver's licenses for illegal aliens or gay marriage or what have you. I don't think I have to convince anybody here of what the right position is on the issue. We just have to make sure that we have a strategy to fight, and the 2014 election cycle is obviously where the future of this fight is going to take place. For people who don't know me, my name is William Kelly. I have tried to lead an effort to educate people to oppose giving driver's licenses to illegal aliens. I write for the Washington Times. It's the community section, and I've used that column to write about the issue. And I don't know how many, does anybody here get my email blasts? That, okay, well.
I used to.
You used to?
Yeah, I fell out.
Oh, okay, well, I don't know how that happened. But anyone who'd like to receive my column, when it's posted, there is a sign-up sheet in the back, and I'd be more than happy to, to sign you up. I've been a conservative activist in the state of Illinois for 20 plus years, since 1994, or 1992 with Pat Buchanan's campaign for president. So I'm really just getting started, I know. God willing, there'll be another 20 years. But the last time I was here speaking, I was a Republican candidate for Illinois comptroller. Speaking of the financial issues, I was in a primary with Judy Topinka, and I gave a great speech here. Wouldn't you agree, Ray?
I'm not a fan of Judy Barr, but
Judy who?
Sadly, my entire campaign was downhill from there. But at any rate, Judy Topinka, no surprise, is a big supporter of driver's licenses for illegal aliens. You would think that her number one issue would have been solving the pension problem. But to your point, the people who want to continue the status quo of both parties will endlessly try to divide us and conquer us and distract us with these issues. And the sad thing about it is they succeed on all fronts, okay? And so Judy Topinka is a supporter of driver's licenses for illegal aliens. Rahm Emanuel, a supporter of driver's licenses for illegal aliens. Your Sheriff Mark Curran, a supporter of driver's licenses for illegal aliens. Okay? That's obviously a weird combination of people, unless you really understand the combine and how it works in the state of Illinois.
So how does it work?
Well, that's
how
really...
How do you get a driver's license?
I'm sorry? How does the combine work, or how do they get the driver's licenses?
How do you get a driver's license without a social security number?
Right. Thanks to your sheriff, they will be getting these driver's licenses. And I remember back in 1994, just to prove that I am who I say I am, I ran for Congress against Bobby Rush in the 1st Congressional District. That's where I grew up. And there was a family. Does anyone remember the Willis family? Yep. The Willis family tragedy?
the tower is named after them. Oh, no, that's
They lost 6 children as a result of Ricardo Guzman, who created the circumstances where 6 of the Willis children died in a fiery accident.
On I-94.
Exactly right.
I think George Ryan remembers that very well.
Yeah, George
He
Ryan
was the
is,
Secretary of State at that time.
for all practical purposes, George Ryan is sitting in prison because of that tragedy, and 6 Willis children are still in their grave. And I attended that wake, and I can tell you right now that very few things have left an impression on me more than walking into that funeral home and not being able to walk 4 feet in any direction without bumping into a tiny casket. And it made an impression on me, and it made me want to do everything in my power for the rest of my life to keep our streets safe and to keep our highways safe. And you know, I think that this bill to give driver's licenses to illegal aliens is sadly putting us in another situation where we could not only see another Willis family tragedy, but multiply that now by 250,000 illegal aliens. Okay? I don't see how any law enforcement official, or any Republican for that matter, could possibly support such a bill. And the fact of the matter is, and I don't, you know, I thought that this would be a debate, and perhaps the sheriff will be here to be able to respond, and I'd be more than happy to hear his side of this. But
we don't understand it either.
you don't understand it either.
We don't understand his side either.
Yeah.
We love him, but we just don't.
Well, you know, it's funny that you would say that, because I met the sheriff, I guess, when I was running for comptroller, perhaps. We may have walked in a parade together or something like this. Or had he already switched from the Democrat Party? When did he switch?
Yeah, he
from the Democrat
switched in
Party?
December 2008, month
Okay.
after Obama got in.
Well, then I believe that we may have marched in a parade or two together in 2010. He struck me as a very nice guy, the kind of guy that I grew up around. I grew up in Beverly in the 19th Ward, southwest side of Chicago. A lot of Irish Catholic police officers, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And but I can tell you this, that not a single one of them ever would condone law breaking, much less giving special rights or privileges to people who break the law. I remember more than a few of them pointing out to me when I turned 16 that a driver's license was a privilege and not a right, and that privilege could be taken away from me if I broke the law. And I can tell you right now that the only thing that we know about the illegal aliens that Mark Curran wants to give driver's license to is that they have already broken the law.
Right.
So they've already done the one thing that I was told would result in me losing my license. There are a number of things that I find to be obviously unfair. I was also raised to believe that America was a sovereign country, and that the number one responsibility of anyone who took an oath of office was to protect the borders of our country. I also believe that protecting our borders, there's very serious national security implications. The 9/11 Commission was very, very clear that the number one goal of the 9/11 terrorists, and keep in mind, you know, when you have millions of illegal aliens in this country, you don't know. Sir, you're shaking your head. Am I saying something wrong? No. Okay. That when you have millions of illegal aliens in this country, you don't really know what their intentions are. Okay? You don't know what their criminal background is. You don't know if they're what country they're from, if they are who they say they are, and you don't know if they are in fact terrorists hell bent on killing Americans. So the 9/11 Commission clearly stated that the number one goal of these 9/11 terrorists was to obtain, as quickly as possible, a legal driver's license, because they knew that the quickest way that their plan to fly those planes, hijack those planes, and fly them into the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers, was to the quickest way for those plans to unravel would be to get pulled over without a driver's license. So the first thing that they said in their little checklist of things to do before they could kill Americans was get a driver's license. And now, thanks to your sheriff, and Judy Bartopinka and Rahm Emanuel. Now, in the state of Illinois alone, hundreds of thousands of people have these driver's licenses. And there are other states, to be clear, that have passed this similar style legislation.
2 states, right?
Well, that's very interesting. And please feel free to interrupt me at any time and ask me a question. Don, well, here, let me respond to that first, okay? There were 18 states in total who passed this similar style legislation. 16 of them have already repealed it. Have already said this is an invitation to fraud. This is terrible. 2 states still give driver's license to illegal aliens. I guess will be the next
And
one.
Mexico is looking at new ways.
And New Mexico is looking to repeal. In other states where this bill, where this style legislation passed and has been repealed, hundreds of people had as their home address an auto repair shop. Okay, people who didn't live in the state. So this is an open invitation to fraud. Don.
It's been my experience, and I think maybe Connie could confirm this, and a few other people who've been around the Peterson Road Secretary of State's office, that on a regular basis for years, and I mean as far back as I can remember, you could go there any day of the week, and you would find people outside coaching individuals who were going in to get a license 100% in Spanish. These are people, I don't know if they spoke any English at all, but the Secretary of State's office was kind enough to translate everything for them. They were already obtaining licenses. And I don't know if they were providing fraudulent identification or how they were doing it, but people who couldn't speak a bit of English and were young were there getting licenses.
Yeah, and
I don't know if they were citizens. They,
There's no
it's conceivable that some of them
requirement
were,
to get a
but
license.
for the most part, I don't think they were.
And there are ongoing investigations into the Secretary of State's office. There's an FBI investigation into a Chinatown
Pipeline.
ring of fraudulent driver's licenses. So the fact of the matter is that we always refer to the George Ryan example, but because that's the only thing that the media wants to talk about, and I guess we also kind of follow suit. But yeah, this is just going to make a bad situation even worse.
Through all legislation that goes through Springfield. This is not supposed to be good for anything, not even buying alcohol. It's only good to identify yourself for operating a motor vehicle. That's how it's been explained to me. As far as our borders, that's a federal issue. Our state's so screwed up. I don't know. We have a sanctuary city. This is a big can of worms. To dump this on the sheriff, I think he's just looking at reality. The reality is that the illegals are here. Our state has no interest in doing anything about it. Our federal government has no interest in doing anything about it. The point was made, and it's well taken, that the insurance goes with the car, which I think is kind of goofy. Since it's the operator. It's not the automobile that gets in accidents, it's the driver. That's a whole other issue, why we have insurance that way.
Why did you say it goes with the car? It doesn't.
Yeah, it does.
The insured is the person who's insured, and that's the...
That owns the
It's
car.
the owner of the car.
If you're the owner of the car, the question is moot because you're both.
You can have
But
20
if
people.
you drive somebody
borrow.
else's vehicle, their insurance covers you driving that vehicle.
If you give permission.
Yeah, but if you drive a rental vehicle, your insurance is liable.
If you drive Ray's car and you have an accident, you're at fault, Ray's insurance company is going to pick up the tab.
That's correct.
I'm in the insurance business.
I think I have the floor.
That's right.
I was just pointing out about the sheriff's point of view. I'm sure we'll get here eventually. Just from what I've read, when illegals are pulled over now, if they're unlicensed, what happens now, my son was in an accident with illegal people it's got him about 8 years ago. Actually, it was his fault. He pulled out too far into the intersection, so it wasn't a big deal there, but nothing was done. This is in Wakanda. They let him go. They're illegal. They have no operator license. They smacked into him. He messed up. He didn't stop properly at an intersection. But they walked. There's no recourse. The way it's set up now is completely loosey-goosey. If this tightens things up at all, it might have some merit.
Right. You're right. It's loosey-goosey. I remember when I first started in politics 20-something years ago, whenever I would go on a show and I would try to talk about conservative candidates' causes or issues or values, inevitably, the person that I was debating would say, whose values? Your values? And that was the beginning of the moral relativism, okay? The political correctness, the affirmative action, the idea that there's really no right and there's no wrong. There are no, what is the bill anyway but paper? What are the rules anyway, right? I'm sorry, but that's not the way I was raised. So I like the sheriff. When I met the sheriff, when I first met him, I liked him immediately. He's one of those kind of guys, isn't he? Kind of like yourself. One of those guys that the second you meet him, you like him. We're fellow members of the Knights of Columbus. Okay, we're fourth degree. I don't know if there's anyone here from the Knights of Columbus, but okay. Well, yeah, you didn't give me the secret handshake when I walked in.
No.
Okay, I don't believe you. Didn't you say that you visited Russia? Is that where you were visiting? Okay.
Test them before you leave.
I'm joking, of course. But when I first met Mark, we had a lot in common, obviously, and I was very happy I was thrilled that he had become a Republican. He came to my birthday party. I don't know how many people received an invitation or heard about that, but I was running to become chairman of the Chicago Republican Party. Believe it or not, there is one. It's a little like that movie 300 minus 299. Okay, have you ever seen that? Anyway, we had Dick Morris in for the event. And Dick Morris was a great and gracious speaker. He even wrote me a check for $1,000, believe it or not, Dick Morris. He came to town, took us out to dinner afterwards, even though there was a full buffet at the fundraiser. And Dick Morris took us out to dinner afterwards, wrote me a check for $1,000. And so he, I guess Sheriff has just arrived. So, but yeah, I like Mark the moment I met him. I was a little surprised or taken back to find out that this was his position, not only because he was a Republican, but because as a law enforcement official, it just seems like the last people that you would ever expect to sign on to this, Democrat or Republican, would be law enforcement officials.
Well, to make one last comment, my thinking would be if you had, if people were properly trained, and all this did was just to verify if these people are trained to operate a motor vehicle.
Sure.
There might be some value in it, if that's all it does. If it tries to be a proof of identity, then that's where the problems start.
And ask Mr. and Mrs. Willis how.
Well, that was for corruption. Obviously, that was not the case yet. They had none of these.
Well, it uncovered a corrupt activity.
And I can definitely.
It's still bribery.
And I don't know about you, but just speaking for myself now, and I'd be very happy for the sheriff to have a chance to respond to this, some of these questions. But I am not the least bit satisfied that Illinois politicians have more integrity than they did at the time of the Willis family tragedy. In fact, I would go so far as to say that they have less integrity. This bill is an open invitation to fraud. That's why the 16 of the 18 states that passed it have already repealed it. My goal is, in fact, Susana Martinez, the Republican governor of New Mexico, is desperately trying to repeal this bill in her state now. And it's and the percentages of people who want this bill repealed are across the board, Democrat, Republican. I believe that the number, they actually polled Hispanics in the state of New Mexico, 68% of them want this bill repealed. It is that dangerous for public safety. And all I'm asking is that you do go to the website, pull up some of the articles that I've written. I'm obviously going to stick around and come back to the podium if that's how Ray wants it done, to answer, to refute.
Well, I think we want to let the sheriff have an opportunity to make some
100%
comments.
yes.
And then we can take questions to the both of you.
Yeah, outstanding.
If you don't mind just sitting down for a moment, we'll let the sheriff come up.
Absolutely.
Mark? You want to come on up and discuss
themselves somebody vouching for the fact that they went through the process. And let me say this much also. Supporters of the bill, obviously, were in the last governor's race, were Bill Brady, staunch conservative, Matt Murphy, staunch conservative, Kirk Dillard, staunch conservative, Dan Proft on his radio was completely in favor of it. Jim Ryan, a good friend of mine, was very much in favor of it. So out of the last governor's race, all the major conservatives were very much in favor of this. And I appreciate Mr. Kelly as well. I think he's done a lot of wonderful things, and I've supported him in the past, and I differ with him on this issue. But let me tell you something. This is a long issue, I think, to prioritize as far as conservatives. I mean, we're in a lot of trouble. Cardinal George said not long ago that he expects to die in his bed. He expects that his successor will die in prison, and his successor will die against the wall. I mean, y'all, your free speech is going to be coming under attack, folks. What you believe because of your faith is going to be perceived as hate speech in the imminent future. I mean, we're going down a real dangerous path, folks. And our freedoms are very much at stake. And I would say that, good minds can differ on this one.
Well, 18 states apparently had tried this, and then 16 of them have rescinded it. And that seems like that's a more than adequate test. What did they find out in those 16 states that caused them to rescind what they had originally approved?
Colonel, I am not familiar with all of the states that tried it and what have you, and I don't know if the accuracy of that, and I don't question you. I think you're a man of great integrity, but they did look at other states and where it had failed, and one of the failures in other states was that the driver's certificate was potentially used in other arenas, and this one clearly is not going to be allowed to use for gun shop or to get on airplanes or what have you.
Well, Sheriff, don't you think it's still just incremental, though? That this is just one step, and that the story we heard earlier from the earlier speaker was that many of the safeguards and the provisions in the bill that would have safeguarded it have been watered down or removed, and that the ultimate bill may turn out to be nothing more but another slap in the face to people who believe in the rule of law.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ultimately, I believe in the rule of law. I mean, but we have to be honest about that. When we talk about the rule of law, a couple things. One, our country had the rule of law that women didn't have the right to vote, minorities didn't. And, Rosa Parks called the rule of law. I mean, you can go on. Nazi Germany was the rule of law, and so ultimately, some laws, are unjust in some sense. I'm not talking about this one. I'm just saying, my problem, I've given my whole life to making no money and being a prosecutor. And so I believe in the rule of law as much as anyone. But getting to that table, let's talk about immigration in a broader picture. President Obama, alone, not his cabinet, not Congress, has the sole determination as to who's deported and for what offense, and whether anybody gets deported. And that's what the executive branch of the federal government has the power of. And so, I think we have to be realistic about where we're going in terms of immigration on these issues. If we think that we're going to somehow have this strong rule of law and people are going to start getting put on buses and what have you.
Well, let's talk about that issue. How many unexecuted deportation orders are there floating around in the United States? Isn't it the better part of 1 million?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, those are court orders. I don't know. I mean, that's his administrative agency. makes those determinations as to, whether or not there's a deportation or not. And, some of those stats they keep very close to the vest, so we don't know all of them.
When some laws aren't enforced, it makes everybody lose respect for all laws.
Right, but, like I said, we could be looking at real fast a law that says secret, conservative organizations to meet in a public place that are not part of a larger political party are hereby now illegal.
Well,
We've had police walk in these meetings.
Oh, yeah, but he said that could be. He's not-
That's already happened.
That'd be a violation of the First Amendment, and it's not a violation of the First Amendment to mandate that a Catholic Church provides abortifacients.
Of course.
It's not a violation of the First Amendment to tell a pastor, Protestant pastor, or what have you, over in Afghanistan that he can't talk about the sanctity of marriage. It's not a violation. And we're headed, Ray, you've been around, and I know you've been talking about this for a while. We're headed in a direction, the rule of law.
The chaplain is a military person, he's not like a regular pastor. And that's the case you're talking about, the chaplain.
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure, Mike.
Along with the matter at hand, about the, do you know if the insurance companies are in favor of this? It's my understanding that insurance companies, I'm not exactly how this works, but my understanding is insurance companies are loath to insure in an accident where the driver's not licensed.
Right.
What with insurance companies, what are their feelings about this law?
And they're absolutely 100% behind it. The insurance industry was.
Can you flesh out their reasoning? Did you ever hear what their I
Right.
can surmise.
The overall, ultimately, it's exactly that premiums are at a high in large part when you have more uninsured drivers. And that helps with it. But it's similar.
Hey, Mark, would you like to address that a little bit? As many of you know, I'm a licensed insurance agent in 4 areas out of 6 in the state of Illinois. What happens when someone's illegal and they're driving? What do they do after an accident? They take off. They're probably going to take off at a higher rate of speed than what speed they were going when the accident happened. So what do you have after that? You have some real ugly ricochets where people are more seriously injured and hurt. The cars are abandoned. Other property is destroyed getting away. Maybe they can weed some of the bad drivers out here. At a minimum, 250,000 people are going to get some training before they get on the road. And if they're already there, what does that hurt?
My dad lived in Mexico, and he stayed at the accident scene. It wasn't his fault, so he was locked up. And he said, in Mexico, you're supposed to flee. In this country, you're not supposed to.
So they do have to have insurance in order to keep the license, though, right?
No,
Insurance is on the car.
no, it's the same as it's a driver's certificate. It's not a license. And the process. There's already this.
So first of all, they don't have a social security card, so we're going to give them a license. And then there's no telling whether when they get behind the car, there's no assurance that they do have insurance. So I don't know why insurance companies and our law enforcement companies would like that scenario. That seems to be a recipe for disaster. We have all these uninsured drivers around, right?
Now the hope is that people will avail themselves of the
Let's
process.
keep an eye on the speaker and the questions.
If I get caught without insurance, it's not my registration card. If I get pulled over, they want to see my insurance card, right? So what happens when you pull them over and they don't have an insurance card?
You write
You're
them a
going to be right
ticket.
back to where you were. You're going to have to throw them in jail, and then you call the whatever, and they don't want to come pick them up, so then we throw them back on the road. So there is actually no law.
There's no insurance being that everybody's going to make themselves available or avail themselves of this. There's no question how many people will or won't.
Well, I'm not criticizing the program. I'm just trying to make it a factual. I'm trying to figure it out in my head. I haven't read the bill, but none of it makes sense to me. Just
Right.
as a common
I
sense.
mean, there may be some notes as to what was said by the insurance industry on this.
Well, it's more revenue for them, for one thing, they're selling more policies.
I have to make a point. Mark was coming We have to give Mark who's coming in to speak on something else.
No, that's okay.
Oh, no, you.
I don't really,
No, he was
I'm
coming to
not really
speak on
prepared on anything.
Okay.
to be honest.
Hey, Mark.
Actually, Doreen's right, though, I wasn't.
Yeah.
coming
But
to
isn't
stop
there,
it.
my point is, but I'm really concerned, because I pay a lot of money in insurance every year, so why should I pay insurance if they don't have to have insurance?
Well, no, they would be in violation if they didn't have insurance.
They will be. Okay, that's all I want to hear. All right, I'm not going to buy insurance if they don't have to buy insurance and they can drive a car.
It's not a pre-requirement
I agree
to
with
get the
you, Sheriff,
license, that's the
because
point.
kind of a
It doesn't, you don't have to
totally
get,
mute situation. These 250,000 people are driving anyway. They're all on TV. The lady says she's got to take her kids to school.
Right.
She's got to go to work, and she's driving without a license.
Right. And let me
So what
say
difference does it make?
one other thing.
They're breaking the law.
Is
Well,
ultimately,
they're very
I have, I've lobbied obviously in support of this, I was in support of this, no question about it, I don't hide from that. But I have never not enforced the law. And ultimately, you look at what Sheriff Darden did in Cook County and just on his own, unilaterally releasing people, we've never done that. Unilaterally deciding not to enforce foreclosures, we've never done that. We quarrel with the law, but we enforce it. Ultimately, I think that's what you're called to do as a law enforcement official. I don't jokingly say we're going in a direction in this country where I think that y'all are going to, your conscience may discern that I have to violate this law. If we head in that direction where, you're going to be called to give up people because they wear a Roman collar, or because they're a pastor at a Protestant church, or what have you, or who knows where we're headed. Ultimately, though, we could be headed in a very dangerous direction where your conscience is going to mandate it. And, as sheriff, we're not there. I enforce all the laws. And, as a law enforcement official, I would enforce all the laws. If I got to that point where I couldn't enforce the laws, I would walk away.
If someone is a Mexican citizen and they come to the United States touring or what have you, can they use their Mexican driver's license without any problem in the United States?
No, they can't.
Because if we go to Europe,
you're right. Yeah,
if we go to Europe, we can
they
use our Illinois
sorry.
driver's license.
You're right.
Some countries you have to have an international driver's license.
It's got to be a compact agreement.
As long
Well,
as
in
it's
Canada, you can use a U.S.
You can buy one of those at AAA for $15.
So if an undocumented alien had a Mexican license, would he be all right to drive here in the United States?
He would, yeah. The problem is, what about the people that have been here for 20 years that can't get it?
Well, right.
The first thing, I just want to make a comment, and that is, and I appreciate your stance and your candor about the way you feel about the law and how it might help the law enforcement to allow the illegals to have driver's license. But I just want you to be aware that we were talking about 18 states that had passed it, now 16 had done away with it. We aren't sure why. I'd still like to know, I think New Mexico is one, but I'm not sure what the other state is.
I thought there was only a couple states that ever passed it. I don't have all that.
New Mexico's
But
still trying.
I don't, once again, I don't want Illinois to be out there as a leader, and God knows we don't need to be a leader, as saying, let's legalize illegals to drive cars in Illinois, and then have other states using us as, hey, Illinois thinks it's great. My question to you is, along with allowing, and I do believe that's the case, if I go to Mexico and rent a car, all I have to do is show a driver's license. I know I have to in Canada. Hertz is up there and they let me have a car with an Illinois driver's license. But my question to you is this. If I came from another state, and it's been a long time since I lived in another state, but if I come from another state, I have to surrender my driver's license here in Illinois and then go through all the tests.
Right.
Only if you're going to be a permanent resident of Illinois.
Well, but
Temporarily, you don't have to do that.
But if I'm getting a driver's license as an illegal, wouldn't they have to do likewise? And if not, are we becoming second citizens?
I don't understand that last part.
These are driver's certificates. They have less limited use than a license. A license satisfies for identification.
That's right, certain times of the day, day of the week, or things like that. A restricted license as well.
Temporary visitor's driver's license.
Temporary, yeah. Well, I think we've exhausted the questions on the issue.
Oh, wait, I got one fast one, right?
All right, I think you beat him by a split second, so you're next, Peter.
Sheriff, it's not as much a question as that I object personally to the hyperbole of bringing in Nazi Germany.
Thank you.
You could have not mentioned that and still been respected the speaker.
Okay.
Now, we are not Nazis in here.
Nobody said that we
Close to
were.
it. But essentially, you're talking about the rule of law to be Nazi German.
Right, and the point is that, are all laws,
That's right. He's just saying,
equal, number one, and ultimately.
every nation has laws. Some
Right.
of them are good, some of them are bad.
And, I mean, quite frankly,
Nazi Germany was bad.
are you satisfied with the direction that your freedoms are going?
Well, absolutely.
Most
We're
importantly-
centralizing the government to come out just like the governments from which our intelligent immigrants came in Europe. Socialist, centralized,
I mean, then
and
there's
states debased.
Okay, I mean, then it's to dismiss what Cardinal George said is just some craziness, but by the same token, I think a lot of people believe that what he said was not craziness, that we are in very serious trouble with where we're headed.
That's right.
Well, that's a very different issue than a driver's license, although that could be a small niche in the start.
Yeah.
Okay, Bob.
This is the last question, go ahead.
I hadn't heard the Cardinal's comment, but you know what? It's frightening and it's scary, and I'm kind of a big picture person anyway. I think it's true. But beyond that, were there any things missing in this bill that maybe you wanted to see added? And I know you're involved in the discussion stage before.
That, when you mentioned about, fingerprint, that would ideally, what have you, that was Jesse White's office's decision that they did not want that and they lobbied against it. And Secretary Jim Edgar, who was the Secretary of State prior to that, did not think that was a good idea as well. And I think so the bill went through without, that provision. Ideally, I didn't see the harm in that.
Yeah.
So,
Is it foregone that the bill is going to pass, or is
well, the
it?
bill passed. I mean, it went 41-14 in the Senate, and it went overwhelmingly in the House too.
So it hasn't been signed?
No, the particulars of the bill are up to the Secretary of State to put in his executive order.
Well, first of all, if he doesn't sign it, they have a veto-proof passage of it anyway.
Okay, what was your source on the 18 states, 16 rescinded?
FoxNews.com. If you search this, it's widely reported that there are newspapers in every major newspaper has said 16 or 18 states.
If I may respond to what the sheriff had to say. First of all, I don't know if any of you were able to follow what the sheriff just said, but I'm tempted to just say I rest my case and go home. But there were a couple of things that the sheriff said that I found very disturbing. One of them, and I don't really know how to even, I lost track of them, and I can't really order them in order of importance anymore. But I will say this. The fact that the sheriff did not research this issue well enough to know that 16 of the 18 states that passed it have repealed it. Why? Because of fraud. Because of accidents that took place on the highways. Okay? Because of loss of life and property. That concerns me. Okay? The fact that the sheriff would bring up Catholicism. I'm a Catholic. I spent 4 years in the Catholic seminary. I studied in Rome for a year. I can tell you that there are two schools of thought on Catholics. The majority of Catholics believe that America is a sovereign country and that we should protect our borders and that we should be patriotic Americans. Okay? There is a school of theology in Catholic theology called social justice. This is a communist-inspired theology that people like Father Flager promote, and essentially, I don't personally believe that it is Catholicism. I believe that it's nothing but communism light. Okay, that essentially communists, Bolsheviks like Rahm Emanuel, they push this social justice as a way of duping feeble-minded people into becoming their essentially they're pawns.
Let me just say, I'm gonna interrupt, all right, okay, I'm
Please do.
gonna interrupt. Number one.
Although I didn't interrupt you.
Okay,
I didn't
number one,
interrupt you.
Doreen will tell you that I did not come out here in this setting. This was not set up this way,
Right.
number one, okay? Right, is that right, Doreen? And I wasn't asked to be, debating or anything else, and I wasn't even prepared to talk about this.
Right.
So number one, okay? Number two, you want to attack the Catholic Church. The bishops came out unanimously in favor of this.
I did not attack
Okay,
the Catholic
so you
Church.
are-
I am a Catholic.
Okay,
You can't get your facts straight on
I mean,
that.
that's fine. There's a lot of people that pick and choose what they believe as far as the church teaches, but to attack, you're attacking the magisterium. You're not attacking Father Flager. The bishops came out unanimously in favor of this bill.
First of all, I did not interrupt you. This was billed as a debate. And,
By who?
No? Okay. I was under the impression that, well then, in that case, I apologize. I was under the impression that it was a debate. I was under the impression that you were up to speed on the issue, considering you endorsed it. The fact of the matter is, to answer your question, insurance is not a prerequisite for these licenses. In the 16 other states that repealed, one of the reasons that they repealed was they said that there was no increase in illegals or anyone else for that matter getting insurance. Maybe a few legal citizens or legal immigrants decided, what the heck, I'm not going to get insurance either. So that was one of the reasons why they repealed it, not to mention the fraud, the accidents, the loss of life, and it's very discouraging to also hear the sheriff talk about the loss of freedom. I believe that America is the freest country in the history of the world. I believe that the best way to preserve our freedoms is to preserve our borders. And if anybody who doesn't understand that you cannot have a sovereign country without secure borders should not be carrying a badge and a gun, in my opinion. In Illinois, we have leaders who want to take your guns. They want to give illegals driver's licenses. They want to redefine marriage. They want to destroy the Catholic Church. They want to spread gambling and disease. And that is just the chairman of the Republican Party. Okay? Imagine what the chairman of the Democrat Party wants for you and your
We're
freedoms.
working on the chairman of the Republican Party. So.
Oh, really? Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your help.
It's on the agenda.
Oh, good. Well, my understanding is that my understanding is that Pat Brady's plan is to have Angel Garcia, who also shares Pat Brady's views on a number of issues, to replace him as chairman. So that's a little something for you to think about.
I just want to have a pause here to answer the question about the debate.
Yes.
This was not scheduled to be a debate. However, to my knowledge, the two parties involved had countervailing positions. And all I wanted to do was to allow each of their positions to be heard and the audience to ask any questions. And I think in the main, that's what we've achieved. There's no doubt in anybody's mind that we have differing views.
Yes.
And I applaud both of the candidates for bringing their views forward.
Thank you.
And I'd like to end this, on this particular note. Contact your state representative or your state citizen or Jesse White and tell them what you think of it. During the last one.
Since I kind of didn't put a subject down for Sheriff Curran back there,
What's it?
we'd like to invite you back at our next meeting to make your
Doreen,
presentation.
that's fine. I appreciate that. Maybe we'll make it, down a couple more and we'll work on a date.
Yeah, so that, he wasn't really prepared.
Sure.
We're not going to solve the immigration problem in this room. They can't even solve it at the White House in the Oval Office. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ray. I truly appreciate it. And anyone who'd like updates on how we're going to try to repeal this bill, we're going to pass around a quick sign-in sheet. We'll at least keep you updated on what the status of the bill is, or what the status of the law is, and our efforts to repeal it. And thank you again for having me.
Okay.
The difference is they don't want to solve it at the White House.
I don't know.
In this room, we want to solve it. They don't want to solve it there.
getting a little bit above my pay grade, unfortunately.
Solve anything.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask